ChristchurchNZ.
Hello.
And I think we might have Therese on Zoom, potentially. But you come up to the table, team, if you want. Hi, Ellie.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
I think you all know Kath Carter, who's our GM of Urban Development. Thanks for having us today. I'm going to get right into it, if that's okay. I've got just a very few slides, so we can maximise time for Q&A. I wanted to start just to highlight 4 key areas that came out of our letter of expectations. So the first one is strategic leadership. So you asked us clearly to think about how we could contribute to thought and strategic leadership in various policy discussions, and we've acknowledged that in our statement of intent, and it is something that we're very proactively trying to do more of. And I think a good example of it would be the growing relationship we have with CCHL and the subs there. So we are doing as much as we can in this space, and we acknowledge that in the letter of expectation and statement of intent. Mana Whenua is the second area. I think we have a really strong relationship with Mana Whenua. And SailGP and the recent work we've done around the city identity are 2 good examples of that. For SailGP with Ngāti Wheki, and with the city identity, particularly with Ngāi Tūhereri. But we're looking to deepen that partnership even further during the next year. Thirdly, I wanted to talk a little bit about the major events ecosystem. It's been a big priority for us over the past few months to make sure that we are aligned and working effectively and efficiently with CCC and, of course, with Venues Ōtautahi in this space. And I'm pleased to say that the bid round for major events is now open. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then finally, the creative arts strategy. You asked us to consider what support could be provided to the music sector. And so we've actually broadened that to think more broadly about the creative arts industry in Christchurch. And the first thing we're doing is a piece of research together with Toi Tatahi to identify market failures and opportunities. So in our role as an intervention agency, we need to make sure that we're not doing something that the private sector might already be doing. So we have to identify where those gaps are, and then we'll come back and run a workshop with elected members on that. I've got just a couple of slides on income, if I can make it work. Bear with. So it's worth pointing out that we're in a period of financial transition, and I don't think we're alone in this. Many agencies and many organisations are undergoing this. And our third-party revenue, which I'm going to talk about a little bit in some detail, will be, on its current forecast, significantly lower than what we've had, particularly this year, where it's made over 40% of our total income. And there are 3 real reasons driving that. So the first is that a period of significant central government funding that was associated to COVID is coming to an end. And you'll see quite how much that was in a minute. The second is that a lot of our traditional commercial funding sources, the people we would go to partner, such as our tourism partners through our business partner programs, they're actually really still recovering themselves post-COVID, and it's not easy for them to be able to invest. And the last is that we've made a very clear strategic decision to withdraw from some contracts for service on behalf of other RTOs within the South Island, so particularly Mackenzie and Mid-Canterbury. And the reason that we chose to do that was that actually the cost to service those contracts was greater than the income that we received, and it was potentially becoming a distraction from our core purpose, particularly as we develop our destination management plans and start to really focus on Christchurch being a destination in its own right. And so if I then show you in a little bit more detail, this shows you the funding over a few years. It shows you since our formation back in 2016 and 17, and the CCC revenues in the light blue there. You can see how that revenue has been supplemented by third-party funding, which is the navy, the dark blue, and also from our movement in equity and retained earnings, which I'll talk about in a minute. And you see there for the budget for this year it's a significant amount, and for next year it does drop off. So this is our reserves. We were asked by council to use our reserves, particularly during the time of COVID, to make sure that we were really amplifying and supporting the money that you allocate to us as an agency. We have done that. We have reached a point where our reserves are a lot less than they were, so it's not as easy for us to dig into that source of revenue. And then a last one on funding. I just wanted to show you quite how much of it comes from central government. So again, that there are 4 main third-party funding sources that we have. We do some small administration income from, for example, subtenants. The dark blue is central government funding. The contract for service is that one that will come down. And then the last one is partners. And you can see how that partners has really dropped off during that time of COVID. Now, I do want to reassure you that we're not just saying, oh, it's gone down, that's fine, we'll let that stay. That is absolutely not our intent. In fact, we have a paper going to our board on Friday, which has identified some alternative, robust and consistent forms of funding. I've been talking to a variety of different economic development agencies, both here in New Zealand and around the world, including people like Montreal International, who are actually the holders of the best economic development agency in the world title at the moment, to get some ideas of what they're doing in this space. And we've got some really interesting proposals that we'd like to throw around with our board on Friday so that we can start to investigate them. They will obviously form part of our longer term 4 to 10 year strategy and feed into the long-term plan, but we're not going to wait. If we can identify some of them earlier in the next 12 months, then absolutely we will go for it. But I just wanted to present this worst case scenario so that you're aware that we are actually in this period of transition where things are just changing a little bit. So the next one I wanted to show you was our approach to KPI setting, and a big thank you to Sam McDonald. Sam came along and joined one of our board meetings because we hadn't got our new elected members assigned at that point, and it was really helpful to have a conversation about KPI setting. And one of the things that Sam talked about was that he felt that council would be quite positive about our approach to being quite ambitious with KPIs. So our aim this year is to set a target range of KPIs. They will be aligned with our current SOI, but we will set a sort of a minimum viable KPI based on that funding that I just showed you, and then we will set some quite ambitious stretch targets, and we will go hard for those. Trying to be really ambitious, but potentially not being able to hit all of those stretch targets is something we'd love your support on. We want to really make sure that you get the best value you possibly can.
Ellie, I think what I said was we won't beat you up when you come in if you haven't achieved stretch targets.
They were the exact words. And then I just wanted to talk finally about the major events ecosystem before I just pass over to Kath. So as I mentioned, we've been working with Venues Otatahi and Nigel and the team at Council, and we've formed a City Partners group which will replace what was our MISAG group. And there are some really clear principles. This is essentially taking a best for city approach to how we decide which major events we can and can't invest in. And there is a very clear framework and major event strategy that we've all signed up for that talks about, for example, the leverage and legacy benefit of events. SailGP was a great example of that. Also the number of visitor nights, so how many people we're attracting into Christchurch, either from elsewhere in New Zealand or internationally. And also the enhancement of brand and how we can actually really enhance the reputation that we have here as a city. We're also looking at ways that we can work really efficiently and collaboratively with minimum red tape so that we can make good decisions in a timely manner. But we want really clear accountability and ROI. And there is one last thing that I should just mention. We have actually included as part of our terms of reference an upweighting if we are utilising council-owned infrastructure and venues. And that's not just VO venues, that might be other venues as well. But if council have a venue that you want to see filled in, that will actually upweight anything that comes through our pipeline. That's enough from me. I'm going to hand over to Kath, who just wants to take you a little bit through some of the progress on our urban development projects.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Ellie. Look, this past year, we've definitely seen some great progress made on a number of the sites. You'll see from the slide up here a range of the projects we're currently working on. There's a mix of site-specific projects where we partner with the private sector and we might go in and assemble land. And then there's the more longer-term place-led projects like New Brighton, where we work with partners to invest, to look at coordinate activities in that area. I'll talk you through a couple of what we consider our biggest successes this year. The first is Milton Street. If you go past the former City Care site in Sydenham, you will see that there has been a lot of change now. A lot of the buildings have come down. We've got Orion and Three Waters on site doing upgrades to critical infrastructure. We've now settled with NIWA, who have cleared the site and are getting ready to go in and develop their research campus, and we're progressing plans for a residential development on the remainder of the site. So look, that's quite a significant mixed-use site for that area. And another key project which we have made good progress on this year is Roystokes Hall. Roystokes Hall was part of, for those who know it, a part of the old Seaview School site out in New Brighton. And at the time when we went to the market for the residential development for that site, we decided to retain the Hall because there was so much community interest in the Hall, and look at a pilot for a period of time to see whether we could trial a creative community hub for that Hall. That trial period has ended, and the findings and observation from that has told us that there is a lot of interest, and there is a sustainable model for retaining that Hall. So we've gone out with an expression of interest process, and we've received a number of responses, and they're sitting with the evaluation team now, and we hope to have within the next month to have transferred ownership of the asset to a community group, and we'll be able to announce the details of that in coming months.
That's it from us. I'll leave you with a digger shot of Milton Street in the process of being transformed. But any questions?
Thank you both very much for coming in. We all appreciate that. We have got some questions. I just had one at the beginning. And David, do you want to go back to that government funding table?
That one?
Yeah, that one there. So, and just thinking of other things where that has occurred. For example, I guess what would be, I know it's worst case in terms of what we've got and then what we're sort of expected to drop off. But am I right in thinking that actually there's a lot of variable costs that sit in that? So they're not. So we've probably ramped up to deliver this government service, but actually at that point we stop funding those services and move on. Like, I'm just thinking of different programs of work that. Well, sorry, in a long-winded way, what I'm trying to say is it critical that you get that level of government funding? Because actually I would have thought a lot of the positions you filled and the work that was being done was probably by temporary staff, so to speak.
Yeah, we do have quite a large proportion of fixed-term staff, and a lot of them will come off when the government funding comes off. So you're right, there are fixed costs that are linked to a lot. Central government money in particular often has a lot of fixed costs associated with it. So there is a cost comparison that comes down when the income comes down, but what will change is what we actually deliver. We've got very used to being able to have a large, for example, major events portfolio, and that will change just based on the amount of, when we go back to our core staff and our core BAU, so then there is just a change in expectation. But you're absolutely right. We'll cut our cloth to suit the income that we get, 100%.
That's great. Thank you, Ali. Okay, so we've got Tim, Phil, and then Yanni, and I'm sorry, I should have noted Victoria and Jake are on the board, so they probably won't participate as such. So, Tim.
Thank you. And I'm not picking on the Roystokes Hall, just with regards to the comment of sustainability. So with regards to that, many years ago we had an organisation came to us and said they've raised all this funding, and it sounded amazing, and I think it was just over $750,000, but when you cut it apart, 3/4 of that was actually from council and different parts of council. So you could say that technically they weren't sustainable without council. So with regards to projects, when you are looking, or they are saying to you about their sustainability for the future, how much is that propped up by the council? Because as you know well, we have shrinking funds, we have higher demand from right through our communities, both business and social. So do you comment on that?
Do you want me to talk from the Roystokes?
No, I'm not picking on that, but the comment with regards to, if you're looking at organisations and groups and they say and they are sustainable, but how
really
is there a content about?
You don't want to gift a white elephant, and that has been something that we've taken into consideration right throughout the process, and that's why the process has taken a period of time, because we needed to make sure that there was an ability to have a model at the Hall where there would be permanent anchor tenants, as well as more, sporadic use of the Hall. So then a key criteria as we go through the expression of interest process is looking at the ability for a group or multiple groups to then demonstrate that they understand the financials and that they're able to have a model in place. We also then look at the agreement we'd have in place with the group, and if after a period of time that wasn't being able to be achieved, then we would get involved. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, just Milton Street. When there's residential buildings going down there, where is it? Is in the, say, resource consent, building consent bit, and it does go out onto those social houses that we've got, and how's the swapping around of that land going, please?
It's in discussion at the moment. The subdivision is being progressed at the same time. So I would suggest that within the next couple of weeks, we'd have an agreement, and then at the same time, we've been running the subdivision process to create 2 lots. Yeah.
Okay, so those, I assume all those houses at the front are on separate title or on one? Do you end up taking that title over?
Yes, yeah. Okay. But we want to create 2 lots at the site, so it provides the opportunity to work with more development partners. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you for the update. I was in terms of the urban development, I was trying to understand what the sort of KPIs are around the benefits, particularly around affordability. I've looked at like the Seaview pricing, you know, and it's 475,000 for a 1-bedroom apartment, 600,000 for a 2-bedroom. To me, that doesn't really feel affordable, and I just wondered, like, what's the sort of measure around success in terms of affordability? And do you have any measures around who's actually buying these houses or how they're being used in terms of?
So in regards to the New Brighton homes, the Beresford and Seaview, the 2 beds are under the Kiwi Build cap, and the 1 bed is also at Beresford. We do know that while they have put their pricings in places for future stages, that cost escalation is sitting at about 15 to 18% at the moment. So that is also having an impact. So in terms of looking at affordability, we've sort of taken a slightly different approach to each, but mainly looking at it on the Kiwi Build. But with Milton Street, that's something that, in terms of sort of a third of your income.
So do we have any targets around like first time home owners, or like, for example, Pacifica have really low rates of home ownership? So, you know, increasing home ownership in communities or groups that have less home ownership. Is there anything like measures that
and
we've
look,
got?
that was in particular, so when we went through the expression of interest process for the Beresford development sites, part of that key criteria was looking for, the provision of a range of housing types, be affordable, social and market, and then also having environmental homestays 7. So in terms of we are able to do that through that process, and that's a similar process that we'll do through Milton Street.
So would we be able to get like a sort of report at some stage when all the units are sold as to who's bought the properties, how many have gone to Airbnb, how many are to first homeowners, multiple homeowners?
Yeah, and so we know at the moment with Seaview and New Brighton, it has been younger single who have taken up the first stage, and so they're conversations we have with the developers because we have close working relationships with them, but certainly we can put together some information.
I think that would be useful. And I guess the other thing is in terms of monitoring performance, like obviously if we're putting in, and I don't quite know with this land, obviously it was Ministry of Education, but are we able to get a sense of this land, we've bought it for this much or acquired it for this much, this is kind of the benefits that we've got, either financial, social outcomes, community outcomes, etc.
Yes.
And we
yes,
and we do.
That's what we do.
Great. Okay. I think that's been asked and answered. So if you can just add that to your work program, that'd be really useful. Yeah. Kelly.
Thanks, Sam. Kath, thanks for the work that you've been doing in New Brighton over the last few years to improve the environment, etc. Just a little concerned about the Roy Stokes Hall. As you know, that was fundraised for and essentially built and run by the community, and then council sort of took ownership of it, I guess. How confident are you that, I mean, you did answer some of this before, but how confident are you that it's going to be sustainable long term? I'm just a wee bit worried because we're trying to withdraw as a council from owning buildings. How confident are you that they're going to be able to keep going, so to speak? Because
Look, I mean,
sorry,
yeah.
let me just ask the last thing too is that if they were to fall over in a year's time, does that come back to us or?
Yes, it would. So then we would have the opportunity to, they wouldn't be able to take the hull to the market. The hull would come back and then we would look at it, assess it again as a community asset and the benefit or potentially other use.
Yeah.
And we do have those clauses put in place that as we go through this process. At the moment, I can't talk about who the groups are because that's going through a confidential process. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the amount of time that you gave the community to step up and put the money where your mouth is.
And I think and that's part of the process that we needed to go through. Yeah.
Great, good job, thanks.
Great. Okay, I think we're there. Tyler looks like he wants to move it, and Phil looks like he wants to second it. Is there any discussion? All in favour? Against? Carried. Great. So you're okay to pick up those couple of...
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you both. And thanks, Therese. Sorry, I should have asked if you wanted to add anything. But
No, the team's done a great job.
perfect. Thank you. See you later.
Bye.
Okay, we're just... now, we had scheduled Gillen for 12:15, so he's going to zoom in at that point. So I wonder...